Hey guys, James from Sikky Manufacturing. On this third episode of our FRS LS build series, we're going to give you a little glimpse behind the scenes on what all went into designing these headers. So here you can see this is the design concept for the left side. As you can see, we've run the merge bullet in here just to make sure the airflow stays at its maximum coming through the collector and as little turbulence as possible. As modeled with the V-band flange already attached to the collector. Another design note is we try to run as minimal bends as possible to keep the air flowing as quickly as we can. Another thing to note is 3 out of 4 of these tubes are all one piece mandrel bent, which is very important because compared to a header that's welded together out of multiple pieces, these joints in here, if this was a welded and not a one piece like ours is, each joint in there actually causes some turbulence, slows the air down a little bit. Due to the design and the constraints of fitment, we did have to make this particular tube right here a two-piece tube because we have back-to-back bends and there's just physically no way to mandrel bend them with the most machinery that's out there. So this is a complete assembly of the engine in an FRS. This is actually an LS3 with our pan and mounts, and now the finished header design. As you can see, these actually fit down in between the steering column and the frame rail. When it came down to it, you stacked 4" and 7/8 tubes next to each other. You start to run out of room really quick. So we ended up designing these offset steering rack bushings, and if you look real close, they're labeled left-hand drive. So if you're looking at the bushing like this where you can read left-hand drive left to right, that means it's in left-hand drive position, and there's an index line so you can set it. But you can basically put a wrench on this thing and turn it, and the whole rack will kind of shift in like an ellipse. So you can adjust it to whatever works good, but typically fully maxed out, basically pushing the rack all the way to the right for the left-hand drive setups will get you perfect amount of clearance at the rack, or the column I should say, going up here. So you can see it's, you know, still tight, but there's still plenty of room for the engine to move around a little bit. And the other cool thing about this header design, as I'll show you in a minute, is really simple installation. I mean, it literally takes 30 seconds per side. You can drop the whole header in right from the top. So you ever got to work on the car, you know, a lot of that, just like the mount kit, you know, we put a lot of thought into fitment and making sure that, you know, if you do have to work on the car, it's not going to be one of those like cussing and throwing your tools kind of moments. So anyways, we ended up with really good clearance. We got these 1 and 7/8 tubes in here. You can see here's another example of what it looks like with this merge bullet. This is a really important feature that isn't on all headers that are out there, so it's one thing to look for. And, you know, comparison wise, if you're in, you know, comparing different header options out there, this merge bullet will definitely help get these exhaust pulses out of this collector in a smooth and least amount of turbulence as possible. But you know, either way, it's a 3" outlet too, so it'll keep up with just about any horsepower you're going to throw at this naturally aspirated, and has a high flow, so you're definitely looking at making maximum power with these headers compared to what else is out there. And a lot of that, like I explained, with the way the runners are actually routed and the least amount of bends and least amount of weld joints, these are just built to outflow anything that's currently available while still fitting with precise fitment. So one of the other things is we have a pretty extensive jig setup that, you know, is all developed in CAD and laser cut, so these headers come out exactly the same every time. And we are looking at developing a Y pipe that will tie into the factory catback. So any of you guys that already have an aftermarket catback, we designed this to basically connect the dots. So the ultimate goal there is like zero fabrication. I mean, that's kind of like the whole point of our mount kit solutions. They're not just like, oh, here's motor mounts and you guys figure the rest out. You know, we try to cover all the bases, so you can literally, you know, go to our website, buy every component you need to complete the entire swap and not have to fabricate if you don't want to. I mean, nothing wrong with making your own exhaust if you want to, but not everybody has that time or capability, and it just makes it a lot easier for the backyard mechanic to pull this whole swap off without headaches and in a relatively short amount of time. The other thing that to note about our headers and why they have awesome sealing characteristics on the head gears, after everything's welded, these actually get machined. The flanges, the backside of this flange gets machined perfectly flat, so it's like smooth as glass. So with the gaskets we provide with the header, and as long as it's torqued properly, you won't have any leaks down the road. I mean, maybe a really long time down the road your gaskets might fail with age or something, but either way the header remains flat, so you can just put new gaskets in, but that could take 8 to 10 years or so. Another benefit of our header design that's often overlooked, and sometimes I've seen, it seems like header manufacturers don't even consider it till they're all done, and then it's like, oh well, it's too late. But spark plug boot clearance, obviously this header design is set up so it's not going to be an issue, but I've seen in some cases you have somebody will design a header to have like an extreme angle of the tube coming out. What happens is if it crosses over this normal path to the coil, you end up running too close to your header primary, and even with like shielding and stuff like that, you can have like issues with spark plug boots or wires melting, and in worst case scenario your spark is arcing outside of the wire. So another thing to keep in mind is just there's a lot of room here. It's very similar to or better than factory clearance on the spark plug wire. So again, just another design element that would probably be overlooked, but from a comparison standpoint from what else is out there, definitely something to keep in mind. Our engine placement in this chassis in the FRS and BRZ is the lowest and farthest back on the market right now, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. Obviously you want your center of gravity to be as low as possible and the weight to be back behind the wheels, so that was a big part of the design, but that also created a lot of difficulties for us, which is why we developed solutions for that along the way. The next one we're addressing right now, we actually have some prototypes drawn up, and things are moving into developing or producing the first couple articles or pre-production, is a master cylinder solution. So don't worry, for all you guys out there, we're going to have a simple bolt-in master cylinder upgrade that actually has the right clearance to fit right in here, and you can install it very easily, versus the factory one sticks out much too far and would contact the valve cover here. So it's not an option. But there's a solution or two out there now, but it's not really what we would say ideal. I mean, it works, but at the end of the day we wanted to develop something that kind of checked all the boxes for us and was easy to install, and also an upgrade to the factory clutch master setup. So we'll touch on that more in the next episode, but just wanted to mention it in case anyone was wondering out there. But that's pretty much it for the CAD side of things. Alright, so as mentioned, one of the goals we had going into designing these headers was try to make the installation as easy as possible and make them fit right and left-hand drive. So we achieved both those goals, and anyone that's ever done an LS swap before and fought with headers, you can understand the frustration that can be getting them into the car. So the nice thing about these, we were able to make them very easy to install, which I'm going to show you real quick how simple. Basically, they 100% drop in from the top, so a little finagling, but it doesn't take much, and we're already lined up. So I like to start a couple bolts, put the front one in here, just get them snugged up by hand. But that's it, about 30-second install for a swap header. Can't complain about that one. Now this car is obviously left-hand drive, so this side has the actual steering column in it, and just to show you how well this works out, simple as that. This back bolt's a little more challenging to get in because of the brake booster, but either way, it's still, in the scheme of things with the swap header, it's a piece of cake. Alright, so here you can see this is the OEM steering rack bushing. Just to touch on this a little bit more, it actually spaces the rack back a little bit, so a little side benefit to the Sikky offset bushing is it pushes the rack all the way forward. So for your drifters out there, you know the benefits of that. It just helps with the steering angle kits and making sure your geometry is right when you're at full lock, or at least up, better than it could be. Either way, you can see this right here is in its left-hand drive position, 180-degree rotation, puts it in a right-hand drive. So pretty simple. You have an index line if you want to make sure it's perfectly flat, meaning it's all the way to the left or to the right, but you can also play around with this if you wanted to, and it could be slightly up and over or down and over depending on what you wanted. But from our testing, the best clearance is either this direction or this, depending on if you're left or right-hand drive. Simple installation too. Since we're going to go left-hand drive configuration, you're going to want to put this to the point where it actually says left-hand drive right there in engraving. So simple as it's a light press fit. You can actually do it by hand and slide it right in. And at this point, the other side's actually tightened down, so it's not going to move. But if you have them both loose and the bolts started, you can actually put a wrench on here and turn this, and it'll actually move the rack back and forth. So pretty neat little feature, but just want to show you what it looks like installed and how easy it is to install it once you get the factory bushings pressed out, which isn't that much work either. So I want to point out the collector placement here. It was very intentional where we put these because we want to leave enough room where when you're fabricating our exhaust, or eventually when we offer a Y-pipe that connects to most catback systems, aftermarket and even OEM, we wanted to give enough room to have the V-band clamp assembly be up and out of the way so you're not snagging that thing on all kinds of obstacles and speed bumps and stuff like that. So that gives you enough room to get the clamp on here and come out with a 3-inch tube and then follow contours of the floor pan. So symmetrical too, so it makes it a little bit easier on our end for fabricating a production version of a Y-pipe for you guys, just to make this thing 100% bolt-on. But we're working on that now. But the main thing is these headers are designed specifically just to make life easy. Perfect amount of clearance. As you can see, the offset steering rack bushings are installed in this car right now in the left-hand drive position, so it's shifting this whole rack about a 1/4 inch to the right. Gives it a perfect amount of steering clearance where there's a lot of wiggle room and no chance of hitting steering column with everything installed properly. So one other thing to note, these headers have really good clearance all the way around. There is one spot where it's within a 1/4 inch that if you wanted to give yourself a little extra room for clearance before you do the header install, you can actually dent in the sheet metal a little bit right here where this little side brace goes across. So there's no issue with denting this in, and I would probably do it just to give yourself a little extra room. It makes the install even that much easier. But as you saw before, the install is pretty basic and simple as it is, but slight recommendation would be to dimple in the sheet metal right here next to this number 4 runner. But other than that, the only other thing we had to do to accommodate these large headers was to relocate the 2 brake lines that are coming to the back here, because they normally come right down along this side of the frame rail, which gets a little too close to the collector. But we're going to put out a simple brake line kit. It'll be stainless braided, 2 lines that get from here to the ABS pumps to make that really easy. So between that and the steering the steering bushings, 2 slight mods we had to do to get these large of a header into this car, but well worth the slight modifications for the benefits you're going to see of these headers, and also the simple installation you're going to have when putting them in. As you can see on the right side, the same thing is going to apply to the left side, where this number 4 tube doesn't need it, but during installation I would recommend denting the sheet metal in a little bit here to get a little extra clearance. So pretty basic. As you can see, these headers turned out amazing, and we couldn't be happier with the final design. To learn more about the headers or the other products we make to LS swap your FRS or BRZ, make sure you log on to Sikky.com or get in touch with one of our knowledgeable sales reps today. And don't forget,
like, subscribe, and click on that bell to get the notification for the next video.